Bageri. chechemekwe yango sendezi mwakile kusema kana ya vinira chechemekwe yango sendezi mwakile kusema kana ya vinira chechemekwe Bagari.
Good afternoon, honored guests, and welcome to the Africa Coalition Symposium on Menstrual Health, brought to you by the African Coalition for Menstrual Health Management and the UNFPA East and Southern Africa Regional Office. My name is Stephanie Lobo, and it is my pleasure to be your host for this important discussion on issues that affect us all, either directly or indirectly.
Yes, Stephanie, I couldn't have said it better myself. My name is Xander Mackay, and I'm very proud to be co-hosting this vital event with you. But before we continue, today is actually Africa Day. Yeah. So happy Africa Day to you all and to you, Stephanie.
And to you, Ayanda. And of course, to all of you at home. Now, this theme focuses on arts, culture, and heritage to build the Africa we all want.
Today, we have an amazing lineup of speakers from all sectors of society, including government dignitaries, academics, NGOs, researchers, healthcare workers, young leaders, and many other stakeholders. I'm sure you're all going to find lots of valuable information and insight about menstrual health in the days to come.
Now, this symposium is the continuation of a discussion that began with the first of its kind Africa Symposium on Menstrual Health held in South Africa in 2018. Now, unfortunately, the corona pandemic has delayed our planned follow-up symposium, but now we're back, coming to you virtually and better than ever.
That's right. So please make yourselves comfortable, grab a cup of tea, settle in for 3 days of report backs, new findings, reflections, and lots of inspiration. Before we begin though, let me take you on a quick tour of our virtual venue. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll find buttons for the chat box, the Q&A, and the People tab, where you can see who's in the session. So just click on a name and you can send them a private message. So why not take a moment and try out the chat? Say hello and tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes, now, while you're saying hi, over the left side of your screen, you'll see your navigation buttons. That's how you get around the venue. Right now, you are watching us in the plenary room, but the marketplace will be open from 3 to 3:30 each day, and concurrent sessions will be running from 3:30 to 5. Just click on the icon and you'll be taken to the room of your choice.
And if you need any technical assistance, there's a help desk in the marketplace, or simply find one of our virtual assistants and send them a message. And now, to kick things off, here's a short video featuring people sharing their thoughts about menstruation and how it affects their lives.
When I was in high school, every month when I started my period, the first 2 days, my parents would literally drop me off at school and I'd just be sick, and around 12 they'd pick me up for 2 days straight. And I've actually winded up in the hospital because of my period pains.
My first experience was I was very scared. Yeah, I was like, okay, what's happening to me?
So with our culture, a period is still a sacred thing. Like, you're not allowed, you're not supposed to publicize like your period. Like, when your period is like your sacred moment, no one is supposed to see your blood.
At the moment, it's taboo to talk about menstruation, like male to male. It's very taboo at the moment because, for one, we both not well educated about it. Secondly, we both from social media taught that it's disgusting, that it's not very nice and everything about it's untidy, it's not clean and everything like that there. So when a gent talks to another gent about menstruation, it's like, hey, what's going on? So at the moment, it's highly taboo.
We didn't choose to be on our period. I think we should be respected and people should understand what we go through each and every month when that time comes.
I think since the beginning of COVID, we weren't really anticipating how difficult it would be to work in PPE, particularly during a menstrual cycle.
Usually in the ICU, maybe they have a problem because one shift has to be like 6 straight hours, wherein there's no tea break, you can't go to the bathroom.
If I had a very long shift, I'd end up having to sort of wear extra in order to cover and make sure that I don't bleed through or bleed onto my scrubs or anything to that effect.
And it also gets sweaty inside. Now you don't know if you're maybe leaking on yourself or is it just sweat.
But Over and above that, you have to consider that if you're going to change PPE, you can't re-wear it because that puts you at greater risk of contracting COVID.
Menstrual products should be classified as PPE because honestly, a great deal of the healthcare workers are ladies. So it's really not fair for you to be struggling for a pad or sanitary towel when you're in the healthcare center. And you think that in the 21st century, menstrual cycles and your menstrual time should not be a problem because we all know that we all go through it.
So for me, the experience of having a period was probably the worst thing that ever happened to me. The starting of the period was the signal of a lot of discomfort. I hadn't really put it together. I didn't know what it meant. And I hadn't really realized yet at that age that I was transgender. That came a lot later. I started testosterone almost 4 years ago now. And the period stopped within a month of starting the testosterone. And it brought me a lot of comfort, changed a lot of how I experience the world, and just in terms of feeling more like who I am rather than having to experience who I wasn't every month for sort of 13 or 14 years. There are not enough resources available for where to get help, for who to speak to. There aren't enough resources even in our healthcare sector of people who understand what it means to be transgender, what it means to be non-binary.
I just like to say people should just be more comfortable, man. It's not a bad thing. It's not anything bad, really and truly. It's like common flu. No one is ever uncomfortable about talking about flu. The fact that I have to buy toilet paper to blow my nose, no one is comfortable about that. So why are we uncomfortable about talking about menstruation? Because it's literally something that people go through. It's normal. Normalize it.
You don't have to be female to have a period, I guess. And you don't have to be male not to have a period. I think it's just something that either belongs to you or doesn't. And yeah, I think it's okay. However you feel, it's okay.
It defines us as females, and it defines a lot of our experiences and how we experience life, and how we experience everything, essentially.
Thank you to all the people who participated in that video. I'm sure you'll all agree that menstrual health is an entirely natural process and that should be acknowledged and celebrated as an integral part of life.
Absolutely, Ayanda. The aim of the African Coalition for Menstrual Health Management is to support multi-sectoral policy making and the scaling up of sustainable, evidence-based programs that address the menstrual health needs of girls, women, and all people who menstruate throughout their life.
And that's all underpinned by the life cycle approach and the right to dignity. After all, menstrual health is a human right, and it's time for us to tackle all the issues relating to stigmatization, cultural taboos, access to hygiene products, amongst many others.
Thank you so much, Ayanda. Now, such important work and such an important conversation we'll be having over the next 3 days. And now, I think it's time for us to introduce our first speaker. What do you think?
Absolutely.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Robert Kampala, who represents the African Coalition on Menstrual Health and is also Regional Director of WaterAid. Mr. Kampala has more than 20 years' experience working in the water and sanitation sector, mainly in the Southern African region. Mr. Kampala, over to you.
Thank you, program directors. Her Excellency President of the Republic of Ethiopia, Madam Sahle-Work Zewde, Her Excellency First Lady of Malawi, Madam Monica Chakwera, Her Excellency First Lady of Namibia, Madam Monica Genkos, Honorable Maite Nkwana Mashabane, Minister of Women, Youth and People Living with Disabilities, Dr. Jurita Onabanjo, UNFPA East and Southern Africa Regional Director, all members of the African Coalition on Menstrual Health Management, distinguished participants, all protocols observed. On behalf of the African Coalition on Menstrual Health Management, and indeed on my own behalf, I would like to warmly welcome you all to this very important Africa Coalition Symposium on Menstrual Health. I am delighted to offer these opening remarks on behalf of the leadership of the African Coalition on Menstrual Health Management, and indeed on behalf of WaterAid Southern Africa region. Established in September 2018, the African Coalition on Menstrual Health Management now consists of more than 600 experts working in or interested in menstrual health issues, policymakers, young people, social entrepreneurs, civil society organizations, and individuals. This symposium is the second such on menstrual health management, following the first one that took place in 2018, as already alluded to by the program directors. The symposium provides an opportunity to take stock of progress made since the first symposium. It also provides us a platform for advocacy, dialogue, knowledge and research sharing, networking and partnerships, and more importantly, sharing of best practices on approaches to menstrual health management. Menstrual health matters not only to girls and women, but also to society and the economy at large. Indications across the world reveal multiple and diverse barriers faced by adolescent girls and women or managing their menstrual cycle. In certain societies, simply talking about this matter, let alone by a man like myself, is a taboo. And suddenly, women and girls in some rural areas in Africa have no access to decent protection and sanitation during their periods. They resort to using old pieces of cloth, newspapers, and even leaves to stay safe, not to speak of no access to clean water for their hygiene. This is a very sad situation. These barriers have implications on the physical, emotional, and psychological well-being. It affects their education, employment, livelihoods, and participation of adolescent girls and women in the economy. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, added to the challenges above is the COVID-19 pandemic, which we are currently experiencing. That has hampered or slowed down efforts to promote menstrual hygiene among women and girls. Unfortunately, at some point during national lockdowns, large numbers of women and girls who depend on menstrual health support programs were cut off from essential services. It is therefore crucial that during and after the pandemic, that menstrual hygiene is prioritized and is integral in all emergency response and recovery plans, as well as long-term development programs. Distinguished participants, as the African Coalition on Menstrual Health Management, we want to see strengthened efforts in breaking the silence on issues of menstruation. It is encouraging to see strong policies on menstrual health in some countries, but poor implementation plans and lack of effective enforcement is holding us back. Furthermore, there ought to be stronger integration and coordination of menstrual health into existing programs, including sexual and reproductive health and rights, education, water and sanitation, trade and industry, environment, gender equality, and empowerment programs. I would encourage this symposium to look critically at these issues. Now, some countries have started rolling out COVID-19 vaccination programs, which is very good. But the challenge of access to clean water, good hygiene for women and girls, including the larger community, is still an ongoing problem. I should remind you that periods do not stop due to a pandemic. As such, there is still a lot of work to do in our ongoing initiatives to ensure that the issue of menstrual health hygiene is addressed adequately. We need to ensure that funding and attention towards vaccination programs does not in any way overshadow the critical aspect of menstrual health and the related social issues. Distinguished participants, while there has been progress in research and effective innovative solutions around menstrual products, female-friendly toilets, education and awareness, this is not sufficient. More and improved funding is needed to support and scale up programming and policies, aided by solidifying and increasing research and the evidence base, and especially to consider the voices and the needs of all people who menstruate, particularly the most marginalized groups who are often left out. Distinguished ladies and participants, in closing, as we converge to discuss these important topics in the next few days, let us challenge ourselves critically about what sort of outcomes we want to ensure that these are well articulated, practical, and achievable beyond this symposium. While the African Coalition on Menstrual Health Management has made commendable successes in its 2 years of operation, greater effort and agency, I want to re-emphasize this, greater effort and agency is needed to strengthen evidence-based, data-driven advocacy, policy development and implementation, but more importantly also programming that integrates menstrual health and the need to ensure sustainable financing for implementing and monitoring of programs. May the hard work and the momentum continue, and I wish you a very successful deliberations. On behalf of the African Menstrual Health Management, and indeed on behalf of WaterAid, I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kampala. We really do appreciate all that you're doing, and we realize that there's so much more that still needs to be done. Moving on to our next speaker is Ms. Deanna Cater, Deputy Executive Director for Program, UNFPA Headquarters. Ms. Cater brings nearly 30 years of experience within the United Nations system. She also recently served as the Minister for Cooperation and African Affairs with the Republic of Guinea. Ms. Cater, the floor is yours.
Good day, everyone. Excellency, President of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, First Lady of Malawi, Mr. Kampala, Your Excellencies, all protocol duly observed, official dear colleague from the United Nations, representative of the civil society, private sector and media, distinguished participant, dear friends. I congratulate the African Coalition on Menstrual Health and its partner and our UNFPA Regional Office for East and Southern Africa for convening this deliberation, focusing on the menstrual health of the girls and women and other people who menstruate as part of sexual and reproductive health and right in connection to the landmark ICPD program of action. Since the 1994 International Conference on Population and Development, sexual and reproductive health and rights have progressed steadily in many parts of the world. Women and girls have more information about their sexual and reproductive rights and choices, along with a greater capacity to understand and claim their rights. Menstrual health speaks to most of the Sustainable Development Goals that we are aiming to achieve by 2030. Menstrual health is a right. Fulfilling this right is the best chance we have in meeting some of the most pressing challenges, including gender inequality, from the economic crisis and lack of healthcare to climate change, violence against women, and escalating conflicts. However, for too many women and girls, including in sub-Saharan Africa, this remains an unfulfilled promise. Globally, an estimated 1.8 billion girls and women menstruate, yet almost 500 million women and girls globally lack adequate facilities for menstrual health. The situation is even worse for women and girls affected by humanitarian crises, those with disabilities, and transgender women who are already facing pushback from their society, which hinders them from accessing menstrual health and other sexual and reproductive health services. Ladies and gentlemen, challenges menstruating girls and women face are often less tangible. They are rooted in social norms and beliefs and the taboos and stigmas attached to menstruation. In many cultures, menstruating women are considered unclean and are systematically excluded from participating in everyday activities such as education and employment. This symposium is a unique opportunity for us to focus on the solution, and there are many. Increasing access to comprehensive sexuality education for in-school and out-of-school girls and boys will address the knowledge gap and stigma and shame typically attached to menstruation. Integrating menstrual health as part of sexual and reproductive health and rights from a life cycle approach perspective, from menarche to menopause. Ensure access to safe and affordable water, sanitation, and menstrual products and services to manage period in a healthy and dignified way. Evidence-based, culturally appropriate, and gender transformative policies and programs must be put in place to directly address stigma and normalize menstruation, situated within wider efforts to address harmful gender norms and gender inequality. Communication and media messages that report on menstruation in a biological accurate, empathic, and meaningful manner. With the challenging facing the continent today, that were further exacerbated by the COVID-19, there is a strong need to foster the multisectoral nature of menstrual health and acknowledge the life cycle approach. UNFPA is fully committed to integrating menstrual health into its work on ICPD 25 Nairobi commitments. To support the scaling up of policies and programs, sustainable financing and financial protection mechanism to attain universal access to menstrual education, information, product and services for accelerating progress towards the universal access to sexual and reproductive health and rights. That's the goal of UNFPA. We are committed to continuing to support the menstrual health agenda on the continent through its role as Secretariat to the Africa Coalition on Menstrual Health. UNFPA will strengthen its engagement with partners and stakeholders, including government, development partners, young leaders, parliamentarians, the media, civil society, and others in the effort at fulfilling the promise made towards improving menstrual health to all age groups. The Africa Coalition, with its 500 members, is an example of how multiple stakeholders can come together to achieve significant change, and UNFPA continues to committed to serve as secretariat to this coalition. Finally, I believe that this symposium will be one of the forums for stakeholders in further galvanizing partnership, mobilizing political and financial support, and helping foster ideas and commitment on how to fully realize menstrual health. As we celebrate today the end of Fistula Day and the Africa Day, I wish you all fruitful deliberation. I look forward to the renewed call to action from this symposium and wish you a happy Menstrual Health Day in advance. I thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Keita, for all the work you guys do at UNFPA, and we ensure to stand behind you actively to ensure the goal for 2030 is achieved. As you may have noticed by now, we are honored to have a number of high-profile attendees from every sector. Thank you all for joining us and being part of the conversation. We're especially honored to have received a message of support from a First Lady of Africa. So please give a big virtual welcome to Her Excellency Madam Monica Chakwera, the First Lady of the Republic of Malawi. In a career spanning 4 decades until her retirement in 2017, Mrs. Chakwera worked with several international organizations. In 2020, Her Excellency Madam Chakwera founded the Shaping Our Future Foundation, an organization that is concerned with the development of the village girl, a cause she's passionate about and that is inspired by her own roots in the village where she was raised with 7 siblings. Your Excellency, we'd love to hear your words of welcome.
Your Excellency, President of the Federal Republic of Ethiopia, Mose Roswede, Your Excellency, First Lady of Namibia, Mrs. Monica Kingo, Ms. Diana Kete, UNFP Deputy Executive Director for Programs, Mr. Robert Kampala, representatives of Leadership of Africa Coalition on Menstrual Health and Regional Director of Water Aid, representatives of the African Union Commission, representatives of regional economic communities, representatives of governments, representatives of United Nations, representatives of media houses, representatives of academia, representatives of CSOs, young leaders, ladies and gentlemen. I bring you greetings from Malawi, the warm heart of Africa. It is a pleasure to join distinguished guests to the Second Africa Coalition Menstrual Hygiene Management Symposium. As we commemorate the World Menstrual Day, let us remember the simple fact that menstruation is a perfectly natural biological process that women and adolescent girls experience. In no way should menstruation be turned into some kind of stigma and taboo. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as a young woman growing up in the village, I know firsthand the challenges that girls face to access appropriate hygiene menstrual management. This is why my foundation, Shaping Our Future Foundation, is working together with partners to break down the obstacles that women and our girls face in realizing their sexual and reproductive health and rights. Malawi has 5.2 million girls and women between the ages of 15 and 54. The vast majority of this population has limited access to hygiene menstrual management. There are a number of obstacles that I am sure are all too familiar for countries in the region. These, I would like to stress, are interrelated and need to be a permanent part of our responses in the sexual and reproductive health and rights agenda. I would like to highlight three of all which we are previously outlined in the call for action at the end of the first regional symposium in 2018. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the first is a continued lack of menstrual hygiene information, resources, and hygiene facilities. The second is the absence of open discussion on menstrual issues and silence that has a chilling effect on public acceptance of menstruation. The third is the prohibitive cost of purchasing sanitary pads and access to clean water. It is estimated that in a lifetime of a woman, she can spend up to $1,000 on sanitary pads. In a country where the GDP per capita is $397 and the average income is between $100 and $200 annually, this is an enormous share of a person's productivity and wealth just for something that is natural. You will all agree with me that the consequences of these three trends are clear and are fundamental in feeding inequality and discrimination. Women and adolescent girls menstruating suffer shame, discomfort, and social exclusion. Not only are these factors working against women and young adolescents, but also the high costs lead to women using unhygienic and impoverished menstrual products that have an impact on wider health issues and costs. Malawi has made some notable progress on tackling these obstacles. Following the first 2018 symposium, the Malawi Water and Environmental Sanitation Network was established. In 2019, it identified 57 organizations across Malawi working on menstrual health. Menstrual hygiene management materials for adolescent girls were produced to increase knowledge about their cycle, and we have invested with our partners in reusable sanitary pads. And championed the menstrual cup with an accessibility study conducted among girl guides and menstruating women, concluding there is a high degree of acceptance. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, our multi-sector approach has led to positive outcomes, and through a menstrual hygiene management hub, there are linkages between stakeholders working in the water sector, health, education, gender, and human rights. This has contributed to increased coordination among the sectors, given the multi-sectoral response needed in menstrual hygiene management. Important dialogue has led the Ministry of Health to support the menstrual cup rolling out, and the Ministry of Education recommended a review of water and sanitation policy to consider having a standalone menstrual hygiene management strategy. We have also learned some lessons, and I believe a key lesson for us all is that high-level government buy-in and advocacy is key to successful menstrual hygiene management outcomes. This, however, also requires community awareness and understanding that is crucial for success. Cultural resistance and rituals are stubborn and require long-term and sustained effort. At the same time, affordability and sustainability are key to improving intervention to address menstrual hygiene management, and we have benefited from evidence and research in this sense. All three are required for a successful response. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, last year in 2020, Malawi experienced COVID-19 pandemic, forcing us to rethink some of the approaches we have employed. As you are aware, This period has witnessed the closure of public spaces and institutions, such as schools, as well as more limited health services. This has had a huge impact on the safe space for women and girls, where they access sexual and reproductive health and rights. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, let me highlight that we need to go further with the agenda for affordable access to clean and safe menstrual hygiene. Products must be affordable, and this means we need to encourage low-cost solutions. Our partnership over the next year will hope to bring about real change for menstrual equity, education, products, advocacy, and livelihoods. I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Madam Chakwera, for all the work you're doing for the women and the young adolescents of Malawi and the continent of Africa. It's now time to officially open the Menstrual Health Symposium 2021. And to do that, please put your hands together for Her Excellency Sahle Work Zewde, President of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. Madam President was elected as the 5th President and first woman President of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia on the 25th of October 2018. She began her long diplomatic career as an ambassador and as a permanent representative to the IGAD for 10 years.
President Sahle Work Zewde joined the UN in 2009 and served as Special Representative of the UN Secretary General and head of the UN Integrated Peace Building Office in the Central African Republic. In 2011, she was appointed as the first dedicated Director General of the UN office in Nairobi and at the level Under Secretary General. After her return to Ethiopia, she was appointed permanent representative to the African Union and Director General for African Affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia. And in June 2018, she was appointed by Secretary General Antonio Guterres as his special representative to the African Union and head of the UN office to the African Union, becoming the first woman to hold these positions. Madam President, the floor is yours.
Distinguished participants, dear sisters, ladies and gentlemen, I thank the Africa Coalition on Menstrual Health Management and UNFPA for convening this event that is centered around a critical matter which is very close to my heart. Menstrual health is a matter of human rights, specifically sexual and reproductive health rights, and also a matter of dignity. Yet many girls and women have little or no access to appropriate information on menstrual health, convenient and affordable management facilities. Despite being a basic necessity, sanitary pads remain an unaffordable luxury for countless girls and women, which has led many to resort to unsafe methods to meet their needs, compromising their health, education, and livelihood. Promoting menstrual health is not only a health and sanitation matter, it's also a crucial step towards safeguarding the dignity, integrity, and overall life opportunities for women and girls. Realizing the Leave No One Behind agenda of the Sustainable Development Goals will be impossible without the realization of menstrual health. The Ethiopian government has been working with civil society organizations to implement a comprehensive menstrual hygiene and health program in the country over the past 5 years. This program includes raising awareness in schools and communities to reduce stigma around menstruation, providing appropriate water, sanitation, and hygiene facilities, increasing access to menstrual products, and make safe spaces available in schools to reduce absenteeism for girls during menstruation. This is an issue that I have taken personal interest in. In fact, a couple of years ago, I convened a national task force on menstrual hygiene management composed of relevant stakeholders with the aim of tackling the multifaceted challenges in a coordinated and impactful way. As a nation, we have had big wins such as the tax reduction on menstrual products and raw materials. This move is expected to increase access and boost local manufacturing. The initiatives we are championing in Ethiopia on menstrual health will have a direct bearing on improving gender equality and the dignity of girls and women in the country. Increased affordability and accessibility of menstrual products would ultimately contribute to the reduction of the school dropout rate among girls and the menstruation-related absence, as well as psychosocial stress in school and workplaces. These efforts also tie in well with the initiatives that I have launched with the aim of empowering female university students and providing them with the necessary skills to become the next generation of female leaders through tutoring and mentorship programs. Let me close by reiterating the government's commitment and that of my all to keep the issue of menstrual health high on the public policy agenda. Let us all do our part to ensure that every woman and girl can achieve their full potential by guaranteeing this most basic of rights. I now have the honor to officially declare the Africa Coalition Symposium on Menstrual Health officially open. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Madam President. Your leadership is truly an inspiration.
And with that, the symposium is now officially open. The first session taking place right here in the main plenary is entitled Menstrual Health Stocktaking from 2018 to date, sharing progress and reflecting on the unfinished business. This session will start at 1:45, and we play out this session with a performance from Eswatini poet Courtesy.
As a direct result of the persistent menstrual taboo, there's a critical lack of health education and resources available to young women about the menstrual cycle. While these taboos exist globally, they are especially prominent in developing countries. In Africa, one of the biggest reasons why adolescent girls miss school is menstrual monthlies. One girl says she wrapped a sock around her underwear just to stop the bleeding, terrified by the combination of what she was seeing and what she was feeling. Another time, she taped tissue to her underwear. She didn't know what else to do. See, she couldn't ask for money because her mother is a single parent and has 5 mouths to feed. So she couldn't dare ask for money for this persistent monthly need. In this country, some girls will miss an average of 4 days of school each month, adding up to about 20% of the school year. Now, whether she is black, white, Jew, or Gentile, there is no way that you will have a fair academic assessment with that percentile. How on earth are girls meant to get ahead or even keep up at school if they have no choice but to miss at least 5 days per month? Not cool. Hashtag her school life matters, because without it, there are irreversible effects on her health, personal development, and economic status. When girls don't have access to sanitary pads, they will often choose to leave school early or stay home altogether, a situation that we can easily resolve all together. You and me and you. You and me and you, NFPA, are dedicated to playing our part, not just with sweet words and shiny bright pamphlets, but with good deeds and loud art. This is not just another conversation about early sex and teenage pregnancy. It's an urgent call for us to protect a basic human right and dignity. So when it comes to feminine hygiene products, let us do away with price tags and taxes. This is not a luxury, but a necessity that she has to deal with on a monthly basis. It is a long road ahead for the emancipation of women from this menstruation stigma. But here we are laying out the roadmap that will lead us to the unraveling of this enigma. Like any other 100-mile journey, this too needs to begin with a small step of our breaking free from the taboo and shame, then encourage others to do the same. Masculinity is supposed to protect the vulnerability of our community. So, I see men, not just as producers and carriers of seamen, but as sea men who will stand side by side with women on this turbulent waters we set sail. The power of the unity of humanity will once again prevail. The light has come, and no longer shall our sisters suffer in the dark, because the legacy of Noah is not that he saw the storm, but that he built the ark. The light has come, and no longer shall our sisters suffer in the dark, because the legacy of Noah is not that he saw the storm, but that he built the ark.
Welcome to our first high-level plenary session entitled Menstrual Health Stocktaking from 2018 to date, sharing progress and reflecting on the unfinished business. In this session, panelists will reflect on the progress made by the African Coalition while acknowledging new challenges that have arisen, including the global pandemic. We also underline the importance of menstrual health for gender equality and sexual and reproductive health, and will affirm the political will to act now for the realization of the 2018 call to action on menstrual health. In the first part of this session, we'll focus on reflections, and the second part will be a presentation of the key findings and recommendations of the stock-taking report. Now, to get proceedings underway, it is now my absolute great pleasure to introduce Dr. Julita Onabanjo, Regional Director, UNFPA East and Southern Africa Office. Dr. Onabanjo is a public health specialist with wide-ranging field and executive experiences, having worked in Nigeria, Eswatini, Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa, and the UNFPA headquarters. In her role as Regional Director, Dr. Onabanjo provides strategic oversight, support, and technical expertise to 23 country offices and partners in the region who work on the ground to improve people's lives by equipping them with policy advice, training, and support. Dr. Julieta, we look forward to hearing your reflections.
Thank you, Stephanie. Colleagues, participants, and friends, good afternoon from South Africa and a happy Africa Day. It really is exciting that we are able to convene, granted virtually, 3 years after the 2018 first ever Symposium on Menstrual Health in Africa. And while the plan had been to hold the symposium last year, as per the commitments we made under the Africa Coalition on Menstrual Health call to action, the COVID pandemic put our plans on hold. That said, we are here today together, and we have gotten off to a strong start with the official opening of the symposium graced by the President of Ethiopia. Such a strong inspiring continental champion for menstrual health. And with important remarks from the First Lady of Malawi, the UNFPA Deputy Executive Director for Programs, Dr. DNA Keita, my boss, and Mr. Robert Kampala, representing the leadership of the Africa Coalition for Menstrual Health Management. The stage has been nicely set, and what I'm sure will be a productive 2021 symposium. As the hosting organization for the Africa Coalition for Menstrual Health Management, let me warmly welcome you again and thank all the panelists and contributors. None of this would have happened without the continuous support from our development partners and donors. In particularly, I would like to thank the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation. Our UNFPA planning team has worked extremely hard, and I'm sincerely thankful to them for their dedication to see this symposium take place. Partners, participants, allow me to start my reflection with 13-year-old Faith Kiriazon from Kenya. Faith recalled her first few periods as punishment. She felt embarrassed to be a girl, and she did not understand why she was bleeding. For the over 300 million women and girls globally that are menstruating on any given day, what is a universal experience of half the world's population can quickly turn into humiliation and isolation when girls are ridiculed, shamed, and do not understand puberty or the biology of reproduction, or have access to menstrual education, information, products, and services. In many instances, the overall silencing of women's sexual and reproductive health and rights, the deprivation of bodily autonomy, agency, and choice is clearly reflected in the silence of women and girls when it comes to their menstrual health. This quiet struggle continues. Period absenteeism, whether at school or in the workplace, leads to setback in other spheres of life and narrows options for many women and girls. And let me repeat what I'm sure will be said many times in this symposium. 1 in 10 girls in Africa miss school when they have their periods, and there is between 10 and 40% school absenteeism reported due to period pains or lack of access to menstrual products. After participating in the discussions on sexual and reproductive health, including menstruation, facilitated by UNFPA and really key local partners, Faith, our Kenyan girl, is now a gender rights, social justice, and health advocate, breaking the silence and stigma surrounding menstruation, one peer learner at a time. Colleagues and friends, Faith represents progress. We have indeed seen progress since the 2018 symposium. What started as a collaboration between UNFPA Regional Office for East and Southern Africa and the government of South Africa with generous funding from the Danish government and the Swiss Development Corporation has resulted in an over 600 member-strong coalition of partners on a crusade to guarantee dignified menstrual health for all those who menstruate on this continent. The coalition has rapidly emerged as a renowned convener of a commitment and a dynamic community of menstrual health practitioners from the multiple private, academic, civil, and public sector. And through their collective advocacy have elevated the discussions on menstrual health beyond the more recognized focus that we used to have on hygiene and wash, bringing to the center stage a human rights, dignity, well-being, gender equality, life course, and multiple sectoral approach to menstrual health. The establishment and the continued functioning of the Africa Coalition on Menstrual Health Management is a critical and a collective achievement that we must celebrate. Colleagues and friends, while menstrual stigma, shaming, misinformation, and myths still abound, it is no longer the silent issue it used to be. For youth advocates in South Africa leading menstrual pad donation drives, to religious leaders in Tanzania challenging menstrual shame and stigma, menstrual health is less of a hush-hush subject, silently whispered from women to women. Indeed, menstrual health literacy has been important for comprehensive sexuality education efforts and an important avenue for boys and girls in and outside of school and communities at large to learn about menstruation as a normal biological process, and also broader sexual and reproductive health and rights issues from a less controversial angle. But information alone is not enough. Women and girls and people who menstruate also require access to menstrual products and services to manage their menses with dignity and respect, free from exploitation and violence, and to be able to understand what menstrual irregularities and menstrual disorders are and when it needs critical medical attention. So the Africa Coalition has done impressive work. It has done impressive work on the issues of period poverty, which remain prevalent. There's access to a wider range of affordable products. We heard that from the First Lady of Malawi. There's universal menstrual health that is affordable now in a number of countries such as Kenya, which has some of the most far-reaching menstrual health tax exemptions policies globally. And other countries like Lesotho, Ethiopia, Rwanda, and Zimbabwe, and I can keep on naming them, have actually removed tax on menstrual health products. Indeed, soon after the 2018 symposium, we saw a number of countries making inroads around tax exemption and free products to underserved girls. Throughout the next 3 days, we will get an opportunity to hear about country experience. An adjunct to affordability, a wider range of menstrual products are now available, including reusables, and we heard about the menstrual cup. Innovative solutions such as the production of menstrual pads from agro-waste in Rwanda, training secondary school students to produce sanitary products in Zambia, mothers groups making reusable pads and cloth face masks during COVID lockdown in Malawi, and I saw this with my own eyes, and using the provision of sanitary products and services as an inroad to promote procurement from women-owned suppliers in South Africa are just some of the examples of how menstrual products have galvanized innovative startups and small enterprises. Providing subsidies, appropriate regulations, homegrown solutions, and most important, ensuring there exist standards for efficacy, for quality, for health and environmental safety will be key going forward. COVID, and we've heard a lot about it already. Unfortunately, like many aspects of the SRHR and gender-related issues, such as gender-based violence, which we've seen escalate in the lockdowns, COVID, but other humanitarian crises as well on the continent, including climate and conflict-related disasters, have shown the pace of our progress and in some cases rolled back choices and access. With school closures due to the lockdown policies, many important school-based education and menstrual-related distribution and programs were discontinued. And as we've heard already, periods don't stop for pandemics or humanitarian disasters. And it remains key that we ensure menstrual products are a standard component of what we call dignity kits, as well as access to water and safe sanitation in these situations. Colleagues and friends, while there is good progress, we have an unfinished promise, as you heard. Going forward, through our collaborative partnership and championed by the Africa Coalition for Menstrual Health Management, we have an opportunity to leverage our multi-sectoral coordinated efforts to ensure that the commendable progress already made is consolidated, scaled up, and accelerated. The plan and actions needed to do this will be developed this week across this continent. We have 2 complementing symposiums taking place and a number of efforts in countries that lead up to this year's Menstrual Health Day with the theme, Time to Act, period. This morning I had the opportunity of speaking at the Western Central Africa Symposium on Menstrual Health and Hygiene under the framework of the Muskoka Initiative. And many of our renowned speakers will also be participating in this virtual symposium. From a UNFPA perspective, allow me to mention a few areas where we are committed to prioritize and expand, and you heard that from our Deputy Executive Director for Programs, Ms. Diana Keita. First relates to integration of menstrual health within efforts to ensure universal access to sexual and reproductive health and rights across the full life cycle of girls, women, and all people who menstruate. This will also include more work on menstrual disorders and irregularities and menstrual-related psychosocial and mental health issues, and also on aspects of disease, vaccines, and treatments, and how these impact on menstruation. It also includes promoting menstrual health as part of universal health coverage, especially through primary health care. Second is about robust and standardized empirical data, evidence, documentation, and tackling research and measurement gaps, including around determinants of menstrual health, effective interventions for improving menstrual health, and the linkages with education, gender equality, sexual and reproductive health, mental health, and economic and social empowerment. I think when we justify financing for menstrual health, it is this lack of empirical data and investment cases that have led us and held us back. When you explain how that 1 in 10 girl misses school due to menstruation and due to period poverty, then policymakers actually sit up. And when you can provide innovative financing models they can prioritize, they then really listen and act. And third is the issue of equity, right, and justice. And we've heard that again from a number of our speakers already. We must leave no one behind. This means addressing the menstrual health needs of all those who menstruate, including persons with disabilities, people living with HIV, transgender and gender non-binary persons, sex workers, prisoners, injecting drug users, and survivors of female genital mutilation. We must all aim to understand the importance of addressing menstrual health for all people who menstruate, also in diverse contexts, especially those in vulnerable situations, including humanitarian settings, low-income contexts, rural areas, remote areas, informal settlements, prisons, to mention a few. And as Her Excellency, the President of Ethiopia, said so eloquently, realizing the Leave No One Behind agenda of the Sustainable Development Goals will be impossible without the realization of menstrual health. And finally, all this requires our partnership to grow and our attitudes and mindsets to change. And traditional and digital media, and they're going to be used right through this symposium, will help us make those key mind shifts. We can achieve this bold commitment aligned in the ICPD Program of Action and during this decade of action towards the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals if we make menstrual health part and parcel of the next normal. We cannot achieve universal sexual and reproductive health without achieving universal access to menstrual education, information, products, and services. Let me end by stating that on this Africa Day and every day, the Africa we want is one where every woman, girl, and person who menstruate is supported to experience healthy menstruation and is able to manage their menstruation with confidence and comfort, with dignity and pride, so that they are fully able to participate in society, fulfill their potential, and live a productive and healthy life. I look forward to the panel session that follows and the rest of the symposium. And again, welcome. Back to you, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Dr. Julita. We really do appreciate you being here and opening this really, really important session. It is now my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Lawrence Kabasele, President of AfriYan. Ms. Kabasele is a dynamic and ambitious young leader from the Democratic Republic of Congo. She is currently the AfriYan ESA President, a key platform which aims to promote meaningful youth participation at national, regional, regional and global level. Recently, she was nominated Assistant in Charge of Young People in the presidential panel that is accompanying the DRC president in his mandate as AU chairperson 2021 to 2022. Ms. Kabesele, we look forward to your comments.
Thank you. Thank you to UNFPA for bringing young people on board, and it's a pleasure for us to participate on this symposium. It's a pleasure for me as a young people, the president of AFRIAN ESA, to represent my fellows and talk more about the menstrual health issues. I'm going to talk about before the Symposium of 2018, how was the menstrual health considered, the actions that are already done with and by young people, the COVID-19 impact, and reflecting on the unfinished business. So, as we all know, before the Symposium of the menstrual health in 2018, menstrual health was erotic. So every year, hundreds of adolescents and teenagers stop their studies because of unwanted pregnancy, which was likely causes and it's really likely causes of lack of knowledge related to their menstrual health and the non-use of contraceptive methods. And we also know there was cultural conflict as lack of communication between the parents and children, but because this was considered as a taboo subject, and also the lack of information on menstrual health in schools and were very limited. So after the symposium in 2018, AFRIAN as a youth network, we became a member of the African Coalition for Menstrual Health, and therefore, as young people, we had to take the lead to act within our country chapters. And I'm going to give some examples, concrete examples that we have done as young people. We have collaborated with partners and stakeholders within our country chapters to push the issues regarding menstrual health. So in 2019, the country chapter of AFRIAN in Namibia and AFRIPAD had a meeting to discuss on the study around the reusable pads and how AFRIAN Namibia could carry the conversation to the government, especially the Ministry of Education, UNFPA, UNICEF, and AFRIPAD. And we are very happy to inform you that finally AFRIAN Namibia succeeded, and the meeting happened this year in March, where the government will help to legalize the reusable pads, especially in the country, in the areas where young people don't have really the economic side to have access to normal pads, because we know with reusable pads we can use it in 1 year, 2 years, and this is more likely to help young people to have more access to sanitary pads. But apart from that, still in Namibia, we know when we celebrated in 2019 the ICPD 25 in Nairobi, as young people, we committed to push and work with the government so that we could have zero tax on sanitary pads. And this has been successful in Namibia. The AFRIAN Namibia carried this, and the Namibian parliamentarian has approved the zero tax on sanitary pads, which is a very successful thing. And as now we are speaking, the dream has been realized as the parliament approved their zero tax, and it's just remaining the matter to finalize the stage and discussion with the economic investment to the committee. So coming back also in the DRC country chapter where I'm from, we have worked with the UNFPA through the Kitumaini initiative, which means hope in English. The Kitumaini initiative is a mutual sector program that enables thousands of adolescent girls in DRC to have access to comprehensive sexuality education, life skills development, and also have access to quality services regarding their sexual reproductive health and right. And as Afrian, we are a partner of implementation of that initiative, and we have worked together with the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Youth, and the program on health of adolescent in DRC to put in place a booklet for adolescents regarding their menstrual health, so that every young girl and adolescent could have access to information regarding her menstrual health and understand better the management of her menstrual health. So we still know, even if we have managed to push things forward, we still have some challenges, and especially with this COVID crisis, it has worsened and limited and has given again limited access of adolescents and youth to reliable menstrual health products. So therefore, I think it will be great for the government and partners to include the access of menstrual health product in their resilient plan, because this is now a gap that has been created due to COVID crisis. But also we know we still have challenges within the toilet conditions. Let's say at school, let's say even at work, at the universities, they are not well conditions, which make that some adolescents and young girls during their menstruation period, they don't manage to go to school because they don't have good conditions to change their pads during their menstrual health period. So I think it will be great as the gap to push for this, the government in partnership with the partners and us young people to have good condition of toilet conditions. But also there is an issue of data. As African, we say we use data to dialogue and influence decisions. But regarding menstrual health, I'll give an example. Like in my country, DRC, we have a serious problem of data regarding menstrual health. And this issue makes us not to know which are the really gaps that are still remaining, and how can we get the evidence to advocate to the partners and the government regarding the issues of menstrual health, even if we are pushing hard on that. So it will be great for partners and the government to invest more in research, because it will be great to have data regarding the menstrual health, and have an information system, a database where we collect the information system. So because data is very important for us to push the issues forward regarding menstrual health, and us to end or to realize the unfinished business, regarding the menstrual health. And I'm sure after this symposium, we shall be pushing again as young people. We still commit to push more so that we could have more young girls that have access, that understand their menstrual health, so that we could realize the 3-0 that will be fulfilling in in our different country and in Africa, so that we could have the Africa we want. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kabesele, for your inspiring work that you do. Now, that concludes the reflections part of this session, and I'm sure you'll agree that our speakers has given us a lot to think about. We will now be taking a 5-minute comfort break, but when we come back, Shanad Mazingera is going to moderate a discussion on key findings and recommendations of the stock-taking report. That's right, we have some very impressive speakers lined up, so please go grab yourself something to drink, and we'll be back here in 5. See you then.
When I was in high school, every month when I started my period, the first 2 days, my parents would literally drop me off at school and I'd just be sick, and around 12 they'd pick me up for 2 days straight. And I've actually winded up in the hospital because of my period pains. So I used to have horrible period pains, and my mom and my grandma would just say it's genetics. So your aunt went through this, you went through this. And I'm just like, guys, I could be dying from something. Can you take this serious?
Yeah.
I think I would just like to say to all the women out there, get the right research, and when you do see a doctor, especially regarding your period and your reproductive system as a woman, always ask questions, even if it seems like a very dumb question. The fact that you don't have that information means you should get it from somewhere. And another thing is meet your body halfway. Try eat the right food, try be active, do some cardio, do this, even if it's once or twice a week. It makes a difference with your experience as your period and your menstruation.
I think a lot of people are not taught about it. I don't know if parents are still afraid to talk to their kids, but then I feel like as women we should give each other support, and then we teach each other, we give each other awareness. A friend of mine started in primary school and she didn't know a thing about it. She cried. She thought maybe she was bleeding, she was hurt or something, so she started crying. We didn't even know, so we had to seek help from somebody older. If we teach children at a very young age, right? So when you teach a child when she's still growing, she's gonna know that this thing exists, and then we have to feel comfortable about it because it's normal. So if we teach a child at a very young age, they're going to pass it to their friends. Children do talk. So if we get a time, we should just give them awareness of what's happening and make them feel that this thing is just normal. There's nothing they can do about it.
I started at almost the age of 16. I was at school, so it was kind of weird, but I was expecting it because I had been having period cramps, I think from the age of 13, so my doctor told me I should start expecting my period. I did have access to information. In primary school, we were taught, I think in grade 5, about menstruations, and I think my mom also played a role in that. I was at the salon one time, and this lady was talking about how her 8-year-old is having a period. So I think, we need to start having these conversations with kids because it's happening.
During my periods, I feel like, I don't want to go out, just want to sleep all day. I started menstruating when I was 14, my first year of high school, I think. It wasn't normal, but then you get used to it. So when I started my periods, and then I asked my mother and my aunt about it, and my aunt was like, if you just stand like next to a boy, you'll end up falling pregnant because it's the period. You are a mature woman now, you're young. So they like told me if I stay next to a boy, then I'll fall pregnant because I have my period. So then for that time when I have my periods, I like won't go to any boy because I know if I stay next to you, I'll immediately fall pregnant. So that's the story they told me.
I was 18 years when I started my period. I was feel like I'm sick. Then I told my mom, there's something came up. Then my mom asked me what's happened. Then I told her. It's painful when I started because I've got a heavy flow. It was the first time, then I didn't know what happened. I was lost in jail.
I'm 26 years of age currently now, so I started my menses I think around 15, 16, which I'm not really early and also I'm not late. So what happened is I was in bed sleeping. When I woke up, I was one of those that really sleeps and comfortably opening my legs. You find that the blankets are on the floor. Then my father is one of those that usually comes into our bedroom, checks up on us. I'm definitely sure that my daddy was the first one to see my menses, but because he's a male, couldn't say it. So when I woke up, Tara, there it was. Having to communicate to my mom, already my mom was at work. Daddy saw it but kept quiet, so I had to deal with it all by myself, alone. You'll find that they usually provide condoms to each and every schools or toilet, but there was never a time where women are prioritized. So however, we plead to the government, can you kindly please consider our women, our ladies out there, especially those who are coming from backgrounds that are very poor, that are not okay. Find that individual who will just head on with a cloth, with a tissue, in which are not really healthy for our body or not healthy for our skin, and also the vagina itself, what is going inside there. And usually you find that cloth is washed with what? With a soap that is very irritating to the vagina itself. So government, can you kindly please step forward and make sure that all women out there, they are in a safe hand, because we are creating other comorbidities. You find that there's gyne-related problems. So you start from an inner or minor age to take care of them once they're unable to take care of themselves. And once we start with the little ones, they will proceed and teach others. Then we are on healthy and safe.
How I felt when I started menstruating, it was kind of weird because I was in class and I already knew about menstruating, but the funny thing is I wasn't equipped. And it was 8-hour schooling, so I had to wait for 2 more hours to get home just to get to prepare for my period. When I went on my first period, like I said, I was in class, so I stained my uniform. So I had to take my jersey, I had to take out my jersey and then cover my uniform until I got home. So it was actually very, very embarrassing for me. And then everyone had to watch it. Oh, okay, now you had your first period. So it was like an amazing thing. So when everyone saw you on a period, like, it's, what? She's on your period. So with our culture, a period is still a sacred thing. Like, you're not allowed, you're not supposed to publicize like your period. Like when your period is like your sacred moment, no one is supposed to see your blood.
Okay, my experience was a bit awkward because I was living with my grandmother. So she was like, no, it's fine, you're gonna be okay. There was no talk, there was no guidance of some sort. Then I cried, I thought I was hurt for some sort, but I didn't understand what was going on. Actually, at that time, there was no one talking about it. It was disgusting. No one was talking about menstruation, no one was talking about anything. You had to experience it when you get there. Black people have a culture and they believe it's still disgusting. You're not supposed to enter at some places when you're on your period. But in a modern life, we talk about it almost every day and any day. I think they should make us feel more comfortable because we didn't choose to be on our period. I think we should be respected and people should understand what we go through each and every month when that time comes. Sanitary towels should be like condoms, where you get them anywhere and everywhere, and they should be accessible and free to each and every young girl. Menstruation is normal. It's very normal, and people should not be treated differently, especially in culture. They should not be treated differently because we didn't create it. It's natural.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. To moderate the next part of the session, it is my absolute pleasure to hand over to Shanad Mazingera, Regional Advocacy Manager, WaterAid Southern Africa Region. Shanad, over to you. It is my absolute pleasure to hand over to Shanad Mazingera, Regional Advocacy Manager, WaterAid Southern Africa Region. Shanad, over to you.
Thank you, and welcome back to the plenary. I just wanted to introduce everyone to the second part of our stock taking. We are going to have two parts to our session. The first part will be a stock taking discussion. Thank you, and welcome back to the plenary. I just wanted to introduce everyone to the second part of our stock taking. We are going to have two to our. The first part will be a stock taking discussion. Thank you, and welcome back to the plenary. I just wanted to introduce everyone to the second part of our stock taking. We are going to have two to our. Thank you once again, and welcome to the plenary. I'm looking forward to this second part of the discussion. As has already been said, my name is Shenad Mazengera. I am the advocacy manager for the WaterAid Region Office, but I'm also a member of the leadership of the African Coalition on Menstrual Health Management. The second part of this discussion, of this session, is going to be in two parts. The first part is going to be a presentation looking back from the time that we had the first symposium in 2018. So looking at some of the key successes, but also some of the challenges. And then the second part will be a panel that will have three discussants, and I will introduce them when we come to the second part. But for the first part, it is my pleasure to introduce Celie Taylor. Celie is a trained public health demographer. She is also she has worked with a number of organizations. She has worked with UNFPA, UNDP, Red Cross, and she has a lot of experience teaching and working on issues of menstrual health. So it is my pleasure to welcome Celie, and she will take us through some of the key aspects of Siri, it's my pleasure. Over to you now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Distinguished delegates, I hope you will permit me to be a little bit informal. I'll dive straight into it. I'm extremely, deeply honored to be here today to present our report. It's actually on behalf of a whole team from WOMENA, where we're looking at what has happened, the progress since 2018, and some unfinished business. I want to thank everybody who has helped to make this possible, including the reviewers, some of whom are present today at this panel. Next, please. The purpose of this review is really just to give a very broad perspective, not to go into deep systematic review of any one topic, but just to give a broad perspective that might help in political, more policy discussions that might come up during the symposium and elsewhere. Next slide, please. So overall, I must say it's been a very exciting experience because so much progress has been made. One thing is that if you look at the overall development, in 2018, we did find that this is a field which has just developed very quickly over the last 1 or 2 decades. But what's exciting in 2021 is to see how much has happened in the East and Southern African region. Many people are observing that this is a particularly active region. We have put together an inventory, the best that we could, of what is happening in individual countries, and it's a very long list in our review. I do hope that people will contribute to it and make sure that it's complemented to make sure that it's as complete as possible. It's very exciting. And I think many of us had some contribution to that, so I think we should celebrate. Now, what do we do now? What's our recommendation? And I think we've seen that in many countries, you know, we've been talking about this for a long time, and we have the beginnings of what's in innovation speech is called the leading edge. Some countries are already starting to scale up. And we would like to bring up some of the tools that are already existing that might help in that scale up, including you have many globally accepted and agreed so-called normative frameworks, and they can be very useful in this national scale up. And the next point is on the concept. The 2018 report and symposium was definitely based on situating menstrual health within the whole concept of health. That was sort of the overall theme for the conference, meaning a physical, mental, and social well-being throughout the life cycle. The life cycle is very important. That's how we framed it at that time, the symposium and also the report. What's happened since then is that this concept is, I think there's increasing agreement that health might be the overarching, the encompassing concept. Could we have the graphic, please? Let me show you this one, which is a graphic which is in a paper which has just came out less than a month ago on the 29th of April. This was commissioned by the Global Menstrual Collective and represents consultation with a wide number of stakeholders. And as you can see, the overall goal is mentioned as menstrual health. And then they have put some of the sub-goals, that materials should be available, that information should be available, etc., that there should be a referral for menstrual disorders and so on. And also, as you can see, freedom to participate. Some of these things are very easy to translate into operational, that is, programmatic components. What should be done by whom and when? Some of them are more complex. Freedom to participate, it's maybe something that we need to define a little bit better, but otherwise it's there. So the point here is that this is intersectoral or multisectoral. We're not talking about creating a new Ministry of Ministry of Menstruation. We're talking about what would be part of the Ministry of Education, what would be part of the Ministry of Health, etc. Next slide, please. Now, one of the thoughts one of the findings in the 2018 report was the review was that actually you have quite a lot of human rights instruments which are available. This is not fluffy. These are instruments which are in principle legally binding. And in the last 3 years, there hasn't been that much in the way of new instruments, but just a lot of reaffirmations. But the important thing is that we already have enough, we think. Well, our recommendation is that we have enough. And what actually might be then useful is to see how we can translate that into something called the Universal Periodic Review, which reviews the state of human rights in each country. And the next ones coming up are the Sudan, Eswatini, and Tanzania, which are coming up in November. And UNFPA, for example, has a website which is dedicated to this issue. And also, I'm sure the regional office would be very happy to provide some advice on this. So that really the human rights, it's not fluffy, it's there. Let's use it, these instruments that are there. The next one is with respect to the Sustainable Development Goals. The 2018 review was very much trying to situate. There was no mention at the time in the Sustainable Development Goals of menstruation. There's still up in the middle was to make sure that this is actually seen as part of the SDGs. Now, the SDGs do not refer to menstruation explicitly, implicitly maybe, but not explicitly, but they do refer to something called the International Conference on Population and Development from 1994, which defines, for example, reproductive health. But that's not much of a help because actually the ICPD does not refer to menstrual health anywhere either. Therefore, one of the most exciting things that's happened is that in 2019, when there was a review of the ICPD in Nairobi, there was an event that was programmed in there, and that was actually as a result of coalition members as well as partners. And there was this event, and there were commitments made at that event from governments and from others. So one thing is, of course, that we should follow up on those commitments. That could be a very constructive kind of thing that we can work together on. The other thing is that, to my mind, now it is to some extent, or yes, it is actually part of how you look at the whole ICPD because it's part of an event that took place in 2019. So now, when you refer to the SDGs, you can refer that they refer to the ICPD, and the ICPD also is now seen to include the issue of menstruation. Another thing on the SDGs is that I think we might usefully use some of the existing indicators and targets under SDG number 5, which is gender, where they have reference to enabling legal and other normative frameworks for empowerment of girls and women. That might be part of the operationalization of the goal that we had before, freedom to participate. So really a suggestion, use that global accepted framework. Next slide, please. So a little bit about evidence. I'm not going to go into great detail because two other panelists are eminent researchers. Just two things that came up in the 2018 review. In the 2018 review that we found, of course, many gaps. Much has been done, but also many gaps in the research. And some of them related to the whole life cycle approach. In other words, not just adolescents, but also adults and also postmenopausal for that people. And also that there was very little reference to menstrual disorders. You heard some of the people talking about pain. That was not really very much discussed at the time. There is more on it now, but we were just thinking you can use the global agreed framework of the International Classification of Disease, which is in its 11th version, and you actually have a long list of menstrual disorders in there, which might be referenced in future research. The other one is just to mention that in 2018, we were concentrating on some of the problems. What are some of the problems that might be caused by poor menstrual health for the variety of the SDGs, the 17 goals? And now there have been many calls that we should actually look at what are about some of the solutions. What is the cost effectiveness of the different programmatic components that we might do in order to improve the situation. And that is, of course, extremely important if you want to scale up, because you can have allocative efficiency of the different components, what works and what does not work, and how much does it cost. Next, I'll go on the products now. In 2018, one of the overarching themes that we recommended was to think of informed choice. In other words, that menstruators should have a variety of possibilities because not every menstruator has the same needs. So you should have informed choice. What has happened on this, I think, is also exciting. We've had several webinars with, including people from who are members of the coalition, on the standards for different kinds of products. So not just one, but several. Also, coalition members, and several of them, in fact, have worked with the UNFPA, UNICEF, and UNHCR procurement office in Copenhagen to make sure that menstrual products are now included in the commodities of the catalogs that these organizations are putting out. That means that governments can purchase menstrual products. It's at this point, it's reusable pads, disposable pads, and menstrual cups, and they can be purchased now at favorable prices under what is called long-term framework agreements. And it also means that there's a certain standards available. So that, I think, is very important in terms of the cost, which is, of course, very important anywhere when you're trying to scale up. What's also important, I think, still is that we have some comparisons of the different products available by various organizations, but they're not necessarily consistent, and they're not necessarily with obvious reference to evidence. So I think that is still something that would be very useful to work on to support the whole theme of informed choice. I am so much looking forward to another panelist who's going to be talking about products or materials, whatever you want to call it. Next slide, please. I don't see the slide. Would you please make it a little bigger? Okay, so financing. Financing in 2018, we had little emphasis on it because there was very little emphasis in the literature on it. Since then, in 2021, we find in the last 3 years, there's increasing interest in this, including what should be the funding estimates, or what are the funding estimates of what is going into this right now. But it's still very early stages. I'm delighted that there's a special session on this in the symposium talking about financing. Yes, I'm repeating it. Financing is important when you're scaling up. Both at the government level or for the individual menstruator and anything in between. Our recommendation, I put review recommendation, was at the time that we should also maybe try to utilize, maybe it's useful, the WHO guidelines on health system financing, which identifies 3 different things. One is cost reduction, one is more efficiency and using whatever is there, and another one is trying to get additional funds. So I'm sure you've already thought of this, but this was just our recommendation. And that includes what several people have been mentioning. What is the effectiveness of relief, of reducing taxation costs? Does that have any effect on the cost of the products? Would be important to look at. The whole issue that we also mentioned very strongly in the 2018 report, which was, what about private business? How do we do public-private partnerships? How do we get them involved in this? And also possibly looking at, for many other sectors, you have global oversight instruments that look at how much money is going into the different sectors. Could we get somehow into those global oversight mechanisms that are already there? Okay, humanitarian settings. Humanitarian settings, I think we should actually recognize that the humanitarian sector was one of the first to pay attention to this. Already in 2001, they started providing what were then called dignity kits. I love the reference to dignity. A beautiful concept that several people I've heard before now have been talking about. And this was 2001. Now, and since then, you have had additional things like beautiful tools that have become available from some of the partners also here, and some of those present in the panel. You've had organizational commitments. You've also had standards, like something called the Sphere standards, which have been updated 2011, 2018, more and more attention to menstrual health. So yes, a lot has been happening. What is still missing, according to some observers, is that there's still, just like for the rest of it, there could be a little bit more clarity on what are the roles. In the humanitarian sector, a lot of work is arranged according to what are called clusters. They sort of correspond to ministries. You have the health cluster, the water cluster, the shelter cluster, the protection cluster. So what is the responsibility of each of those clusters? That's not entirely clear yet. That's on the humanitarian. Then, of course, COVID. We were asked to look at COVID. And we found numerous small-scale studies in the report. Please read it, which are showing that the prices of products have gone up. There's been panic buying of that, just like there was on toilet paper in some countries. Poverty levels have gone up, meaning there's less money to buy these products. There's less access for a variety of reasons. There's the inconvenience, especially for some professions like medical personnel. How do they change products? This is just one small example if they're wearing hazmat suits. And also the hypothesis, I think it's still a hypothesis, that both the lack of privacy and the increasing cost may contribute to the widely documented increase in domestic violence. So this is some of the problems that have been found. Now, with respect to the solutions, many organizations have then come up with solutions, have come up with how can they pivot to provide better assistance. And there have been suggestions, or they've actually done more online virtual information, for example, maybe outreach for some of the products, and some thoughts about what can we do to find longer lasting material, which would be available for a longer life. Okay, next slide, please. This is the last slide, actually, and this is about the coalition. I can't see my own slide. Would it be possible to move my picture? I guess you can't. Okay, I'll have to try to remember. So I may just look at my notes. Excuse me. Oh, good. Can I see it bigger? Thank you so much. Can I see it bigger? No, I can't. Okay. So the coalition, of course, was... Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay. So in 2021, the aims have actually developed a little bit over time. And at this point, they are coordination, they are translating evidence into action, and they are multisectoral policy. Fine. So we had, as a basis for our assessment, we had key informants, 18 of them. We also had some surveys that the UNFPA has done amongst members. And we also had access to, of course, all the documentation that's there. And what we find is that especially the key informants are extremely appreciative of the work of the coalition. They think it has great potential. They think it gives an African voice to the global discourse. And so this is, I think, one of the most impressive findings that we have. The membership, as somebody was mentioning, it's over 600 now, started at 262 in 2020, 590. Now it's over 600. And this is, I think, quite an interesting achievement. There are first 7 and now 6 task forces, which are intended to sort of take part of the work, major part of the work that's resting on. The research task force has been merged into the other 6. Now, globally, I've already talked about a number of the contributions that the coalition has been doing, contribution to the global indicators, to the product standards, to the ICPD plus 25. I'm sorry, I'm getting COVID out. ICPD plus 25, as well as a lot of documentation of how the coalition has actually helped country level, given technical advice for policy or other at country level. Now comes a pretty important point. There is no funding. This is at least what I understand. So this is done on top of what everybody else is already doing for their, their normal jobs. This is commitment for you. And some of the suggestions are that, this was already the intention 3 years ago, that there should be co-hosts. Right now it's UNFPA. Maybe there should be 2 to 3 altogether. And the key informants also suggest limit the aims, or at least the ambition level of each aim, and streamline between the task forces, the aims, and the co-hosts to build on the various kinds of the very different comparative strengths of each of these of the organizations involved. Actually, in the survey, it turns out that many of the people were saying, the respondents were saying, they would like to contribute more. I hope that would still be possible if there's no funding, but that was one of the things many people came back with. They would like to be more involved. One of the consistent suggestions is that we should get grassroots involvement, grassroots organizations. But of course, that is a problem if there's no money for travel. Languages could be a problem. And incentives for, what are the incentives for actually putting, for example, all of your evidence on the website? So our possible suggestions, and really this is just suggestions, you may agree or disagree, is that we should build, of course, on the task forces and co-host strengths. And maybe, this is just a suggestion, have 3 streams. One is community of practice. There's still a lot to be done at the community level. Excuse me, I actually meant practitioners, community of practitioners. Maybe some sort of social media or online media, at least, where people can share. And I would hope maybe even use that inventory we made of some of the activities taking place in the region. We are sure we've missed something, and it would be very interesting to use that, if it's possible, as a point of departure. Secondly, policy. Now here, UNFPA as an intergovernmental organization has been putting a lot of emphasis. I think if interesting, when you have so much going on in the region, would it be possible to share how different governments have actually done their policy advancements? What have been the challenges? What have been the drivers? It would be extremely interesting to compare that. And then the third one is perhaps a little bit more messy, and that is, could we somehow, as the youth delegate was saying, data are important for advocacy. Is it possible to take that, translating evidence into action? Could it be possible to have a third one, which is basically looking at advocacy communications and how do we actually translate evidence into action? Okay, now my last slide, please. Sometimes when I think about this, I wonder to myself, why am I using so much effort to work on this issue? And then I think of this picture. These are South Sudanese refugees in Uganda. They just had training on menstrual health, and they have received a product. In this case, it's the menstrual cup. And they're jumping with period pride, as strong as Maasai warriors. And I look at them and I think these are people who are free, fearless, and joyful. And then I know why I'm using so much time on this issue. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Renata Talarico. I work for UNFPA East and Southern Africa Regional Office. Unfortunately, Shenard dropped out with internet connection issues, and therefore I will be continuing the session on his behalf. It is my pleasure, really, since I've been involved in the study that Siri just presented. And just to really say thank you to Siri and the WOMINA team, as well as the technical task force that worked on the report with all of us. This is indeed a very important piece of work that is the foundation for the symposium that we will be having for the next few days. So I would like to also I'm actually very happy and excited about the fact that the findings of the report will be discussed by an outstanding panel of experts. And we'll start with our first expert, Professor Mani Soma. Professor Mani Soma is an associate professor of social medical sciences at Columbia University in New York. She has worked in global health and development issues, ranging from improving access to essential medicines to humanitarian relief in conflict settings, but also she has particular experience in conducting participatory research with adolescents, the intersection of public health and education, gender, and sexual health. I would like to give the floor now to Professor Marnie. And my question to Professor Marnie is, as we were listening to Siri and to the key findings of the study, we realized that lots has been done, but there's much more that needs to be done to realize menstrual health in the continent. Based on your extensive experience on research, we would like you to reflect on the gaps, on research gaps that relate to menstrual health. And what would be your opinion on the key areas to be focused on in order to accelerate menstrual health and the realization of menstrual health in the continent? Over to you, Professor Mani.
Thank you so much for having me here today. Thank you for the fantastic introduction and foundation that you provided for the part that I'm going to speak to. And just before I dive in to answer your question, Renata, I just want to take 10 seconds to reflect on how extraordinary it is to have this event during this difficult year or second year of a pandemic. And all the amazing progress that has happened since we gathered together in Johannesburg at the inaugural event. And what I particularly appreciate about listening today, this morning over here in New York, is how utterly inspiring it is to hear about the progress. And also all the good reminders about how we have to keep young people at the center of what we're doing and those who menstruate. The importance of not seeing a reversal in gains in relation to the COVID pandemic in all that we've achieved and all that we need to do together. And then for the fantastic report, which I'll now sort of speak to by Siri, that set sort of the where we can jump off to and thinking about the research gaps, which is what I'll talk about, and the linkage to the Sustainable Development Goals and the progress we want to continue to achieve. So in my minutes with you today, I want to talk about what I think the sort of key research gaps are, and they relate in sort of my view to both understanding new populations and to identifying effective interventions that work at scale. And I think I'm going to probably repeat a little bit of what you've heard so far, but may just try to focus it in a little bit as somebody who does research and along with others in the sort of research space. So what do I mean by new populations? So what I'm referring to is all those around the world who menstruate, who we know too little about in terms of their experiences, their challenges, and what might help them to experience their menstruation with dignity. So we know a lot, I would say, about the barriers facing girls in school. We know a little bit less about female teachers. That has been overlooked to some degree. As mentioned, we have a growing body of evidence on the challenge facing the millions and millions, it's extraordinary how many, displaced girls and women around the world. And we're just starting to explore the menstrual health management challenges facing women in particular in the workplace, all people with periods about which we have more to learn, and those who menstruate with varying disabilities, physical, developmental, and so on. However, we've heard a little bit about this, but we have yet to explore, for example, the experiences of those living in peri-urban informal settlements. So if we think about the rapidly urbanizing nature of many large cities across Africa and other parts of the world, we don't understand enough about how people are able to manage their periods in situations with limited privacy, limited water and sanitation, and potentially reduced access or limited access to healthcare. We need to understand more, as has already been mentioned, about the linkages of menstruation and menstrual health with sexual and reproductive health, such as menstrual disorders, which has been mentioned a few times and is a real gap, and the links with family planning and contraceptive-induced menstrual bleeding. One thing that I think is wonderful, and Dr. Julita referenced this, is I think now that we've started to make progress in some areas, it opens up space for us to begin to tackle issues that have not yet been tackled. However, as also noted, that requires funding. The last thing I would mention around populations is there has been over the years a real request from donors and others to see hard health-related evidence that would make them more compelled to invest in this area. But the types of biologically linked studies they may want to see really do take a certain amount of funding. So you're a bit stuck in terms of wanting to see progress on that, but you do need the funding to support that. So now that I've talked a little bit about the populations that we need to learn more about, the second area I want to speak to is better understanding what interventions work, which ones work, how do they work at scale, and what is cost effective, what is most, so that people know in a world of always limited resources and potentially more limited now because of the impacts of COVID-19, how do we make the most of what funding and resources that are out there to really impact the lives of those who menstruate. And when we try to understand what interventions work, which ones are most effective, we need to spend a little bit more time thinking about what do we mean by effective? Does that mean that they are able to engage in school successfully? Does that mean they're able to stay within a job and bring home some funding for their families? Does it mean their health outcomes are improved? So we have different ideas of what effective means, and we need to just think about for each intervention what we're talking about. So when we speak to better understanding of what approaches might be impactful, there are those that are underway in schools led by Professor Phillips Howard, who you're going to hear from next, and others, particularly in Africa, in Kenya, in Uganda, in the Gambia, exploring rigorous interventions focused on improving girls' abilities to engage and participate in the classroom when they're menstruating, and improve sexual and reproductive outcomes in particular. There are other aspects of schoolgoing that we need to understand better as well. There's also starting to be some attention to exploring interventions in the workplace. IRIS and some other non-governmental organizations are starting to look into workplace environments in factories in particular, but we have much to learn. There is such a broad spectrum of workplace environments. You could consider the home a workplace for those raising families, but also those who are doing manual labor in the fields, who are sitting in marketplaces for hours at a time, who are working in shops, who are driving vehicles. And so we really need to understand, even those working in government, how do we make sure menstruation is addressed, the social and physical environment? What are the most effective interventions to do that? And as Siri alluded to, amongst the millions of girls and women who are displaced, we do have growing guidance. We have tools. We have starting to compile best practices around how best to meet their needs. But we need to understand better how to improve coordination, how to have more innovation, how do we have better drying of materials in places that are where people are living in, for example, tented camps and there's heavy rainy season. How do we improve disposal and waste management as there's improved access to different types of materials, but also how do we improve their access to sustainable supplies of materials given the intense demand of humanitarian contexts around the world. We need to make sure that female-friendly toilets become a new standard, and what is the evidence we need to make that happen. And lastly on that, culture has an important role to play in terms of people's comfort level in managing their menstruation, in using different types of disposal and laundering approaches. So we need to make sure we don't lose sight of culture and people's preferred practices as we come up with the most effective interventions. We also need to understand more about interventions that go beyond schools and the workplace to address and overcome menstrual stigma in communities and societies, and those that negatively impact on the health and well-being of those who menstruate. So just to wrap up, I only have a few minutes. I have a final 3 points I just wanted to make. First, and as we've heard already, consulting girls, women, and all people who menstruate directly about the challenges they face in this research and the solutions that they recommend is essential. They know their own lives better than anybody else. Second, as we're going to hear about next from Professor Phillips Howard, improved measures are essential, both at programmatic and national levels, so that we can understand what works and what progress is actually being made or where we need to invest and focus attention. And then lastly, Professor Philip Howard and colleagues from the WHO and the Menstrual Health Collective are working on an important exercise to update what the top research priorities are now through some global surveys they put out to guide future investment and action. And hopefully that will be available to us in the coming months to provide another important foundation for us all to respond to in the coming years as we continue to hopefully make progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Mani, for sharing with us your opinion and key points to reflect on when it comes to research and menstrual health. Now, there are other gaps, as you also rightfully said, that we need to identify. And one of these is measurement vis-a-vis menstrual health. And please, I'm happy to introduce to all of you our next panelist, who is going to focus specifically on issues related to measurement of menstrual health. Professor Penelope Phillips-Howard. She's a professor at the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine. She has more than 30 years of experience. She has over 130 publications, with 20 especially on menstrual health. Professor Penny, please share with us your opinion around measurement and how we can address that challenge or rather gap vis-a-vis menstrual health in Africa and beyond. Over to you, Professor Penny.
Thank you. Good day to you all. So thanks to the organisers for this excellent symposium, and thanks to Siri for such a marvellous report. Our speakers have noted the importance of data, evidence, and examples of success. Indeed, Professor Mani and Therese Mahon are leading a team funded by the Gates Foundation to identify best menstrual health indicators for national programs. And our Global Menstrual Collective group, through the African Coalition and others, are exploring menstrual health research priorities, which includes a measurement component. First, the National Menstrual Health Indicators work has focused on what indicators are out there, and it's identified through policy documents and those that are used in programs to help them understand menstrual health needs and their program activities, challenges, and successes. In collaboration with a group of countries as exemplars, we find an array of indicators, and they're either proposed in policy documents or used practically. These cover menstrual information, education, products, materials, effects of poor menstrual health on girls socially and their schooling, and access and use of different wash facilities and disposal. While they're useful and purpose-driven within a country, what we see is almost no standardization of these indicators, with variations and gaps in some important components. For example, around psychosocial effects of menstrual health and on sexual and reproductive health linked with menstrual health. The main task underway is to identify which indicators are key for programs that can be gathered in a rigorous way and are validated. These will inform decision making and be robust to support longitudinal monitoring to assess effectiveness and impact of programs. There's a need to have a core set of these standardized critical indicators for use internationally. Through consultation with selected national program and international expertise, the study will culminate with a small but solid selection of the strongest indicators that can then be tried and tested and disseminated widely. This will allow aggregation of data and evidence across countries and between country comparisons. Second, on the research side, progress has been made on definitions, with some systematic reviews leading to development of scales, such as Julie Hennigan's Menstrual Practice Scale. Intervention research studies also build standardized measures or adopt from other disciplines, for example, using scales on mental health and well-being, but large gaps still exist. Our study through the Global Menstrual Collective, including members of the African Coalition, finds that despite a huge volume of observational research, many people working on menstrual health seek basic measurements on understanding what is the problem, and not so much all about measuring the effectiveness of their menstrual health solutions. So this really highlights a gap between what is actually researched and known and what NGOs, aid agencies, programs and partners, what do they know, what do they need, and what do they use? Some indicators remain over-favoured, such as absence, and despite knowing that many factors, not just menstrual health, affect absence. However, experts around the world do understand and recognise the importance of other research priorities to improving measuring outputs and effects on education and information, WASH, psychosocial effects, products and materials, and disposal, as noted by Prof. Mani and Siri before. Measurement itself was mentioned as an important menstrual health topic. For example, best indicators for intervention effectiveness, cost effectiveness, and ones that are robust over time. So in summary, at national level, few indicators are validated and standardized, limiting data for decision-making or comparisons. Studies in progress will greatly support this endeavor worldwide. Academic research can support robust indicators, but we now recognize that for field-based NGO, aid agencies, people working on menstrual health throughout the world, efforts are needed to build a toolkit for indicators to help their understanding of menstrual health problems, as well as measuring the effect of their menstrual health solutions. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Penelope. And thank you very much for highlighting for us the importance of measurement in menstrual health and also giving us hope that there are a number of studies being undertaken to come up with sound indicators that will help us measuring menstrual health in the continent and also advocating for more support in the area of menstrual health. Now we're moving to our last panelist, Ms. Alima Lila. Alima is an international sexual reproductive health and rights advocate and social scientist. She's passionate about empowerment of youth, women and girls, which prompted her to found the Hope Center for Children, Girls and Women in Tanzania. Moreover, Alima has extensive experience in the area of reproductive health and supplies, supply chain and market analysis in menstrual health. Alima, I have a question for you that is a little bit different from the previous questions. We are moving from research and measurement to a more an aspect that relates to menstrual products. Based on your experience, and I also know that you are currently undertaking a study in Africa and Asia in collaboration with the Reproductive Health Supplies Coalition, why is it the availability of different menstrual products so important in Africa and beyond? Over to you, Alima.
Thank you so much. Because of my internet limited, I just want to show my face a bit and say hey, hi everyone, and thank you so much for being here. So I'm just gonna switch off my video so as you can hear me clearly. So innovation of menstrual product is very important because women and girls need to have a freedom of choice based on their income, geographical location, preferability, and health implications. Also, we must remember that menstrual challenges to women and girls are not uniform. Each group faces different challenges and it needs a different approach to address them. For example, women from urban area have different challenges compared to women in rural areas. Girls with disability have a different challenge compared to girls without disabilities. Older women have different challenges compared to younger women. Working women and non-working women have different challenges, and women with menstrual health complication have different challenge compared to women who do not have menstrual complication. So innovation is very critical when it comes to menstrual health and hygiene. So I'll share a good example in Tanzania. In Tanzania, we have MHM coalition. So what we did with different importers of menstrual products, we did work with private and public sector. So we work with people who are called Tanzania Breweries Limited. Tanzania Breweries Limited is a very big company. So we kind of work together because the challenge which we saw on the ability and choices of menstrual products, they're not reaching very difficult places. If you know Tanzania is very big. So reaching a place like you can travel for 10 or 15 hours is very difficult. So we collaborate with TABL to transport the menstrual product in a very difficult areas, especially when it's raining. And this was very successful. So because Tanzania Breweries Limited is a very big company, they have truck, they are very innovative, so we managed to kind of have different products in the areas where we thought that we needed different product and women can have choices of what they want to use. So the other innovative idea which I'm also thinking and the other country can also check, it's MSD. MSD in Tanzania, it's medical store departments, which they transport all the essential medicine supplies around Tanzania. So if we can work together and partner and see how we can also distribute our menstrual product via the same route and the same road MSD is using. And also there's innovation of drones. There's drones now across Africa which they are distributing products. I mean, they're distributing medical essential products around different regions. So I'm thinking, how can we also work with the drone people not using this approach, also distributing different product in the area where we think women do not have choices of the product. And also by encouraging innovation in the menstrual product, we'll be able to solve different challenges to different groups rather than forcing all group of women to fit in one solution. So all women, we know all women have their own choices, their own availability, what they want to choose. So it's always about freedom of we can't just summarize and say people want to use menstrual cup, people want to use disposable or reusable. What we need public sectors to see how can we make sure all the products, whatever women want, they're accessible and they're available wherever they are, wherever they're coming from. As I said before, Africa still needs innovation on menstrual products so that women and girls will have freedom of buying menstrual product that fits their need and not just buying a product simply because it is the only available option. We want women to have freedom of choice and choosing whatever they want to use anywhere, anytime. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Halima. Much appreciated. Really, we really appreciate the fact that you came up with suggestions, also reminded us of the importance of the right to choice, also when it comes to menstrual products. Now, unfortunately, we do not have time for Q&As, and I apologize for that. So thanking all my brilliant panelists, Siri, Professor Mani, Professor Penny, as well as Halima, I'm going to hand over back to Stephanie. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Shanad and Renata, and everyone who participated in the session. So much to consider. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take a break from the plenary room. The marketplace is now open, so click on the marketplace button on the right and check out our exhibiting organizations. And don't forget that we have 3 concurrent sessions starting at 3:30. Just click on the sessions button and choose the session you'd like to join. And at 5, there's a country-led session from Mozambique and Angola, also in the concurrent sessions area. Please select whether you'd like to listen to the original Portuguese audio or an English translation. Until then, I am Stephanie Ndlovu saying goodbye for now. Don't forget that tomorrow we start at 12 with a country-led session from South Africa that will be in the concurrent sessions rooms. So don't miss that one. Thank you so much for joining us today and enjoy the rest of the proceedings.
senesi makire mtuseya sana nenda finira chechemekwe o yango senesi makire